welcome to the Diplomats. This is what everybody here should want to hear, which is me complaining and whining like every diplomacy player that loses with sour grapes against the person who took advantage of poor old innocent me. But this is Go Horns Go with Umble. We're here to talk about our first game in the Weaselmoot 15 tournament, which Umble won, in which I came in a lowly 7th. No thanks to Umble in this game one. But before we talk about the tragedy for me and the triumph and success for Umble, we should mention our sponsor, diplomacybriefing.com. Umble, tell us about the briefing.
So the briefing's a weekly update that helps the hobby know everything that's going on, because the hobby just has so many different kind of spheres of influence with extended deadline, but also all the different platform sites and then the upcoming tournament. So we keep everyone updated on what's happening, and it's free. You can go to diplomacybriefing.com. There's also a strategy article every single week, sometimes even 2. So you can continue to improve your diplomacy game while also knowing all that is happening.
All right, so let's talk about the game, but I also want to talk about some things I told you that I didn't tell you that I wanted to talk about before we did this, which is we got put next to each other. You as England, I know you play good England, and me as Germany, and I play good Germany. Don't know how to properly have appropriate boundaries with someone I consider a personal friend on a diplomacy board. What should, in your opinion, the relationship be? I mean, I had a relationship with Audacious Hand earlier in the year at the Summer Classic, and he stabs me. We've been on a board together where I could have eaten you alive if you didn't volunteer your centers to me. And it's so awkward because I found myself in so many conflicts between how I would want to play Germany if you were just a random player, and because you're someone that I have literally talked hours upon hours upon hours of diplomacy with, right? So I feel we had some base of a relationship there.
Well, not just that. Yeah, it's not just that either. I mean, like, just taking diplomacy out of the equation, first of all, it's a very long relationship, right? This is over 2 years. And, especially like from the beginning of the relationship, which was a very contentious finals, and it's just grown since then and beyond diplomacy. I mean, we've talked about, just areas of our life too, that things we've gone through that have been very personal, and it's more than just, hey, I like this person in the diplomacy, in the diplomacy community. It's definitely deeper, and it is more difficult, especially when you take to the point that both of us are very, very competitive people, and we also really like each other a lot. And on top of that, you're in a game that a person can take advantage of that, right?
Right.
Can take advantage of those good feelings. And so all of those make, especially at this particular tournament in particular, a very difficult moment. And so previous tournaments that we've been together, I know the lesson I took from it was there was a few things about it. First of all, they weren't tournaments that I were playing that I was really, really focused on trying to win the whole thing, because I wasn't able to actually play all the games. So I was kind of more looking for some fun things to be able to do and kind of an easy going. And I personally, I know we've talked about this in other podcasts, I felt like I gave you, a little more leeway than I normally would. And at the same time, in our discussions, too, you'd mentioned hey, if you hadn't done this, I would have taken you out anyway, right? And coming into this tournament in particular, my thought process was not in any way I'm going to take advantage, of Ed and his, our relationship. My whole thought process was I am going to strive to play the best game that I can. Now, playing on the board with someone that you're very good friends with is obviously difficult, especially in a small tournament setting. And especially in our relationship, we talk a lot too about diplomacy. So even when we're both on the same board, some people might think, oh, hey, they're going to automatically ally together and be together the whole game. So yeah, it's difficult. And the flip side of that is obviously if there is, if there is a fight, especially if that alliance ends up, not being in favor for the other person or someone takes some of their centers, it can be a little more hurtful, right? In the moment.
It can be. I mean, so right, which is, and there were other factors here too, which is your schedule limited the amount of tournaments you could have played this year. I, knock on wood, have all but guaranteed DB and I invitation for 2022 based on my year's performance. I felt like, I wanted to help you because I believe you strongly helped me at Virtual Summer Classic. I think it was,
No, it wasn't. No, it was
an earlier tournament, whatever it was.
Cascadia, I think. No, it wasn't Cascadia. It was Carnage, because I couldn't play it as much. I definitely could have pressed the advantage in a few different ways, and I probably would have, but I couldn't really play the tournament all the way through. So I wouldn't have played Ruthless with anyone in that particular tournament, regardless. So it wasn't even so much you. It was the nature of the tournament. But what the result was, you did top a board. But there's also, I do want to throw in the caveat. It also was, I knew that either Katie would top the board or you would take me out anyway. So I should put that caveat. But there was definitely a sense, I'm sure, because I had played, my play had helped you out, that, hey, I could see why you would have some tension with, hey, I want to attack Russ right away.
That would have been hard for me to do, just given my personality, despite, the yin and yang. But, other factors are Tim, who played France, was very non-committal to me, right. Which, my bias is when I'm Germany is a GF, right? You're an FG. I don't like a corner power. That's why I'm kind of anti-Turkey in a way. Also, it's like, I knew if we did an EG, you were never going to get your fleets out of position. I was always going to be vulnerable. So it's not like I didn't know this, but on the other hand, look, we have a working shorthand, right? That very few people are going to do and have in diplomacy, which is, you've taught me a lot about how you play, and I think me the opposite. So like, we have a good understanding of the other's strengths and weaknesses.
Right. Yeah. So let me say too, like, so mine, I was probably a little bit different because I was open to working with France. And it was going to come down for me on what was going to be the best path forward. So, I mean, when we started out, the offer that you made was something I would accept with any Germany. So I was definitely open with going with France, especially as I was kind of looking at what I thought some things on the board might happen, because early on in the discussions with some of the East, it seemed like perhaps an EF might be the best way to go and might be the best opening to a board top, which I think actually could have easily happened and worked out, especially with that AT developing. But when any Germany says, and I know we're kind of getting a little bit too
right. I told you could have Belgium. I said, I know your opening moveset and I know you want Belgium, and I want to get ahead of, having to worry about France and a debate. I'll support you into Belgium. I told you that.
Yep. But that wasn't even what sealed it. What ultimately sealed it was bouncing Sweden, building 2 armies, and there's just no way that a Germany that's willing to commit like that to an alliance, I'm there. If you have any Germany that you believe will make that commitment, that's a solid alliance, and you need to make a good commitment too with your fleet builds. Now, if you had not built those 2 fleets, I'm sorry, if you had not gone 2 armies, I wouldn't have built Fleet Liverpool. I would have built Fleet Edinburgh and kept some of my options open. And so an EF might have come out of that. But I was very determined, like, in this game, and it wasn't even so much from like Carnage. It's from it's from Summer Classic. Like, I made some moves in my first 2 games in Summer Classic. Like, I did not make some moves that I just normally always make. I should make that were just the straightforward, this is the best deal. And so really my bad play that I had for like several tournaments in a row, I I sat down and just got my head in the right place, and I had a good Saturday in the Summer Classic. I ended up ending at 8th. And even though in that one too, I wasn't able to play the final board, so I kind of let off the gas a little bit in the game or in one of those games. But I felt like I'd got my edge back and my head was in the right place for the game. And so I had just really determined I'm going to make the best deal that I can get. And Tim definitely did not offer a better deal.
He was non-committal, but like, it's funny that you say all that, right? Because like in my head, it's like, you're saying you did things you would never do. Like I've never built 2 armies. I mean, recently and virtual face-to-face with my record as Germany, which I will put up against anyone's. And it's not because Doug Moore said it. I always build a fleet and keel. But you know, it was a real struggle for me, this, you know, wanting to work with you and wanting to be loyal. I'm sure you had the same problem because you've mentioned maybe you didn't play the purest tactical game that you normally do because we're trying to bend the knee to the other, so to speak. But that kind of puts me in an awkward spot. Like I definitely have a way I like to play Germany. I like to have an ally, but I wasn't myself, right? And so that puts me out of sorts a bit.
Yeah, well, sure. And again, that's always something that you've got to kind of, you just go through games and you figure it out. Now, I will say, so let me just say this, like I really feel, especially from my negotiations with Tim, I really do feel that with what I understand with the board dynamics that happened in the East, I really feel like I was going to be topping this board with what happened with the AT. Even if I had gone with an EF, and that's not anything against your play style or anything like that, I feel like the openings would have been there. Now, maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm just being really overconfident, but there's some stuff that happened on the board that directly limited your ability to become big.
Yeah. And let's talk about those, right? Like here are issues. This game is a little bit against the meta in the East. First of all, you had a defined AT and you had it early. That was a little unusual. You had a Russia who didn't want to commit and was playing it very cagey, and you had a very inexperienced Italy. And that inexperience allows him, as the viewers can see, to just get sort of bamboozled here with an Austrian attack in the spring. That frankly, I mean, thanks to you, I mean, I saw the move and you did too. You had talked to Italy about it, about, you know, helping. But this is not a great situation for Germany, right? When Germany now has to be involved in helping the East not come over.
Right. You're not able to concentrate on getting centers in France. Right. And as has been said in, you know, different ways, Germany and Austria are terrible mid-game allies. So if Austria grows and, you know, figures out his side of the board to where he doesn't have either, if he's got like I would say if there's an AT relationship going on, you know, especially in that sense, like Austria is now a major rival for Germany if there's a successful AT going on. And speaking about this particular turn, and that's another thing, like with the Italian player, like I mapped out the moves to do. Like I had told Italy, I said, you know, if I were you, I'd actually see if you got to get German support. It's a 50-50 guess if he hits Tyrolia or not. I said, but if I were you, I would ask him to support up. I said, I know it's a risk, but I think that's the one that's going to happen. And I'm sure, you know, you looked at the board and said the same thing because you know, you did it. But he didn't make the convoy. Like he had to make that convoy, and he didn't do it. And
yeah, so it's a critical error here, right? Because I guess he thought it would be dislodged. He could have supported it from Naples.
Yeah. When I talked with him about it, the support and making the convoy to Apulia, he said, maybe I misheard him, but he said no, because if, you know, because it's going to attack the Ionian and then the convoy won't go through. And I said, not if you're supporting it. You know, even if you get hit, the convoy still goes through unless it's a dislodge. And so I mean, man, I'll tell you what, he was automatically fighting one unit down because he had this army stranded in Tunis, can't even support Ionian. I had real issues from the get-go with kind of like the way some of the stuff Italy was doing. And Farron pretty much right off the bat too, I think Farron's ultimate
she smelled it. She smelled weakness.
Well, not only that, like, I think her desired outcome here was definitely AT allying with me for the end game, because very early, like, as I recall, I think fall 01, she was like, the way I'd like to see this game end up, and she may probably say the same thing to you, but like
No,
me,
she did not.
oh,
We don't
okay,
have a
okay.
great relationship, although I really like her. I think it's getting better.
Yeah. So she said AT, and then we'll meet you guys and we'll do a split. We'll meet you, I said. And you can take your side and we'll do the whole split on that, which I was like, fine. So that's again why I say, like, even if you and I had fought and I'd done an EF, I really believe that I was going to be topping this board, or at the very least been to the end of it, just because of the dynamics on the board. Now with that
Right,
being
because
said,
those Austrian armies are going to get bigger and they're a threat to, I mean,
right.
you
Right.
know,
And these are just opportunities all over the place for me, pressuring Russia, pressuring Germany. And again, like, I probably, with all the information I had, I would have done an EF this game, because it would have made the most sense until you're like, I'll bounce Sweden. And I hadn't decided, just in my mind, my options were open. But when you had said that, I was like, all right, I'll go in and we'll attack France. But yes, there's, Italy was inexperienced. Wes is a good player. I think an early issue, as people are looking at this, they see Russia going into Sweden. Like, that was an early frustration for me. Like, I don't think any England likes Russia getting Sweden. And he had built his army up there in St. Petersburg. And so I know that there was an early frustration I had, because Wes, which is a good player, and I like Wes a lot, but he was very much, let me into Sweden and then I'll move my army down. And first of all, I wanted Sweden. That's the first part.
right.
Like, I don't want to give Sweden. But you and I talked here, and we were like, if there's an AT, which it looked like, we'll give them Sweden. But it was, and you did the work on this, is that you told him, look, you got to move the army down. He's not gonna let you get the build and then you move the army down. So we can talk about that, but I think it was you who ultimately convinced him.
I think I did. I mean, Wes, and I have played. I can't say we've ever played a successful game together, but we've played 3 or 4 times. And we've always gotten along, right? And
Sure.
The thing about Wes is, I mean, he told me, your diplomatic style and his diplomatic style was a bit like fire and ice. He's just like, you're very insistent that he do something, and
There's similarities.
You're pressuring him.
Well, he's also the same. Like, he's got similar. I think we've got some similarities in some regards. With both kind of looking for what openings we have and being a little bit not. He feels like he kind of has pressure that he doesn't want to let off, and I don't feel like I want to reward that, right? So, I don't know. Maybe you might actually. You can go on that, because you probably have a better neutral read than I do.
Well, I think you're a better. Like, I think you do propose things that are ultimately mutually beneficial, especially early, because you want to get momentum. I think you're a better talker than you are a listener. And I think Wes does
That's
listen.
true. That's true. Yeah. It's something I try to get better at. You're right. In fact, that was one of the things I wrote down when I had several of these games, where it's like, or I wrote down, it's like, I can't talk myself into things that, or more like this, I need to listen to who really wants to work with me and not what people are saying. No, you're exactly right. That's a weakness that I'm continuing to try to get better at.
So yeah, I mean, I think you also see moves quicker than the average player, even the average good player. So people have to catch up a lot of times. But anyways, look, I mean, there's no question about it. I think Andrew Goff had it the right way, which is, eventually, if you think the person not angering anybody is going to ultimately be able to wait and pounce, but sometimes you wait so long that you just get pounced because people get frustrated with you. And we were getting frustrated with Russia at this.
yeah, particularly me. Like this would be, I would say, okay, so after the spring moves, because we gave him Sweden with an expectation, right, to move against AT. And what happens? That fleet doesn't go anywhere. He builds in, the Moscow army sits. He bounces in Galatia. He bounces with you. And then he moved on Norway, which I really didn't like. That I didn't like. We hadn't really talked about anything to do. But, that says to me, now there's the option that, if we don't bounce on that turn and I go in, now he's got, Norway.
Right.
So that seems to me, and I don't know what he was thinking, if it was just, well, I got to order it to move somewhere. But I also didn't like that. And then he didn't go anywhere. And so it was like we gave him Sweden for him to build an army and do nothing. And I think in that moment, that's where I came to you, like after that turn, and I was like, look, this working with him is getting us nowhere. Let's take the centers for ourselves and use them. And there was some like there's some inefficiencies I did here, right? Like I moved up to North Sea, which I should have just supported North Atlantic down. I'm not even sure why I moved up there at this point. It definitely wasn't because I thought you were going to attack me.
Yeah, it only frustrated me, right? Like, first of all, like I really felt like I should have, because you're hard to talk to sometimes, like from my standpoint, and because I actually do know that you're better tactically. Like you really wanted Sweden, but like I saw that you were going to get all the gains in France, and frankly, I was just lucky to get Marseille here. Like I thought maybe I should have insisted on Sweden a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you had insisted on it, I would have probably done it. I don't know. I mean, like there might be a case there for me to get it, though. I don't know. It's hard to say. I wouldn't have been against it. I wouldn't have been against it. But I know at a certain point, like in our conversations, you were confident that you were going to get Marseille from your discussions with France.
I did. Yeah. I mean, yes. No. I only moved there thinking, like, you can tell, like, I believe you're supporting me. I think at the last second, I realized it would be open.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I should have supported down into Mid-Atlantic. It slowed me down a little bit on that side. I definitely made some tactical, not just some bad tactical decisions, but even kind of a misorder too on some changes at the end. It wasn't, the result was kind of a typical English result for me, but it definitely wasn't the smoothest. But yeah, we took Wes's, we took that away for that very reason, because he didn't make a commitment. And the truth here is definitely Wes was in a tough spot. He didn't really have a choice, right? If there's an AT there, it's just going to happen at some point. He needed to make a move set against
Wes is,
or against Turkey.
I don't view him as normally this cautious, right? So I was a little.
There's a lot to process, right? He's facing two alliances, right? He's got an AT and an EG, and he's kind of stuck in the middle.
Right.
It's a tough decision, but yeah, he needed to be decisive here. I don't think the result would have probably really mattered, because he was going to get eaten up by one of us. But maybe if he could hold it back, and he definitely needed to prioritize defending against AT. That's for sure.
And 04 is his big mistake, right? Which is he joins the AT, albeit temporarily.
Yeah.
Austria is pressing their advantage. Mm-hmm. I think we're at some level. I underestimated the ability of Austria and Turkey, Farron and Liam, respectively, to maintain relationship. I mean, ATs are unstable generally. Mm-hmm. And I thought with this combination of characters, both, like I wasn't sure, but they probably thought the same thing with us, right? So like I can understand that. And meanwhile, just I probably should have built the army and just fully committed to you, because now I lose Ruhr, right. Eventually Munich. Some big mistakes.
That second fleet wasn't helpful at that point.
No, it was a bad call. But like, I don't know about you, Russ, but like, I saw this move into Galicia,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, it's a stab. But apparently it wasn't a stab
Okay.
because Bill
Yeah.
Fleet South Coast, he says that was arranged, but
Oh man.
obviously it kind of was meant to be a stab because Liam
Right.
builds the fleet at Ankara. Farron builds an army in Budapest.
That's a great job by Farron. Like that. That's probably, if you want to talk about like the stab of the game, that's a great stab right there. They're going to be attacking Russia, and they take away one of his defending units, make him rebuild it in the north so that it can't help in any way, shape, or form, and then build a fleet on Kara. I mean, like, there's only, those three armies with everything they're going to be throwing. I mean, that is a very impressive play by Farron.
Oh, that's really, really good.
Yeah.
And he goes for it kind of originally, but you can see now this actually, look, I knew you had a good chance of board time, but like I think
Yeah.
had they not stabbed him right here, it was effective in the sense that they could get Russian dots, but it also took a lot of pressure off of you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if they would have let him push a little more towards me, because, putting two fleets, I mean, we were responding, right? Your fleet was going up. We were responding to that, but it definitely changed up the dynamic of the game in several different ways. I guess another thing that should be mentioned is there in the South. So at multiple points, I had conversations with Liam or Farron or both of them. Early on, Liam was like, hey, you can make your move on Ed and I'll make my move on Farron. Now, I've not played with Liam a ton, but I mean, all of my play with him was very early in his virtual career, which was just kind of different. Like I couldn't ever really get a bead on really a play style. Like, would he make the move that would get him the best position? Well, no. Or sometimes, he would just grab center. But this was very on in his virtual career. And of course, I haven't played with him, probably been like over a year since I've been in the game with him. But my experience was I didn't really believe he would stab Farron. Now you played with him more. Um, I didn't believe that Farron was the type of person that Liam would stab to get a board top, because he definitely had the ability to make a play for it at a few different points, and he just didn't.
And I kept talking to him about that, right? That's the burr I'm sort of putting, in his saddle, which is, this is your game, man.
Yeah.
Like, but he did not seem inclined at all. I mean, it was the weirdest thing. I knew there was an AT in 01 because he told me.
Yeah.
I believed him. He kept telling me, I'm really enjoying working with Farron. I'm just going to continue to work with Farron. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the difference, right? I think when you really boil down play styles, there's people that enjoy diplomacy for the experience and people that enjoy diplomacy for the challenge. And the challenge side of it is, trying to figure out your pathway to, topping a board, soloing, whatever that may be. And those that just like the feeling of advancement, maybe. I guess that's hard to say. I mean, I'm probably being a little simplistic here.
I think you are with Liam, right? I call him the Delta variant for a reason. Like he is a little unpredictable, which makes him, by the way, a fantastic person to play with. I mean, you saw in the other game that we went back and forth on stabs. The dude is a straight up great guy, and every game is different. I think he's a little too prone to want to do something like unconventional, whereas I'm more conservative, but I think the two of us are probably a good mix when we're talking about things to do.
Yeah, let me actually, this was something I wanted to mention too. Go back if you can real quick to like, I think it's maybe spring or fall 1902. Go spring 1902. Let's look at that. Because I want to talk a little bit about, we haven't talked a lot about France. Okay, one more. Go to fall 1902. All right. So you can see here there's a convoy to Belgium. And so in his discussion with me, he was like, what would be really fun, and the DBN commentators would love it. If you convoyed me to Belgium and took Holland. And I was like, so what you're saying is you want me to build you to 6 while I stay at 5 and me flush my ally down the toilet. Something along those lines. I suppose that could be appealing to some people. But yeah, and I think that was another, I think I'm definitely just like you, just like most diplomacy players, like we're always willing to listen to pitches and ideas of something that'll work. And I think your diplomacy players that come back from difficult positions, what allows them to do that is that they're creative and are able to paint a picture that's appealing to a particular player. Or they might be able to show that the way they're going is not going to be that effective for them. But definitely saying, give me a center and destroy your ally because it'll be fun on a broadcast is not appealing to me. I know that. It may be appealing to other people, but it wasn't appealing to me. So this was actually the only time that I actually lied to France. Generally speaking, when I'm attacking somebody, I don't just lie and lie over and over and over and over. Because I don't think that's helpful. And plus, as they start to get small, they can become vengeful and throw their centers to other people. It's just not a good strategy. But he like really, really pushed me on it. And he was even like texting me all the way up to the end. And so I finally was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Like with a Discord chat. And then of course I didn't.
Well, I wish you had told me he was covering breasts. I would have just moved to Paris.
Oh, I didn't know he was covering breasts. I mean, he might have told me, but it was nothing that I was like, oh, I know this is going to happen. Like that Marseille when you went to, I think I did message you that was going to be open because I think he had told me that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that to you also, because that had been confirmed by somehow he had said something like that would be an open spot.
Now, this was my doing.
Which one?
Holland.
Yeah, that was yours. Like, I wanted to go to Belgium.
For people listening on the broadcast, like they were like, it's an oops thing because we didn't know what the French army was going to do. I asked you to move to Holland.
Yeah, no, I wanted to go to Belgium because I wanted to bounce them primarily. And I wanted to keep my fleet in the North Sea. And I thought it was more likely that Belgium would be the case. When this all went through, I mean, I don't know if you remember, but I was pretty upset at myself because I'd exited the English Channel, exited North Sea. I was getting builds and I couldn't convoy any armies anywhere. And I don't know if you remember, but I was like, man, come on.
Yeah, and I wasn't happy either, right?
Right.
So yeah, so that was a bit of a bummer. Tim did a really good job of keeping both of us a little off balance in a defensive game, So
yeah, like here, obviously, really what we should have done at the very least, this is another mistake. I should have gone to Belgium anyway and just forgot about Paris and been like, I don't, that's going to bounce anyway. So either I should have bounced in Belgium myself, which might have been what I originally had ordered. I might have had a bounce in Belgium. And then you asked me to do it. And so I said, okay. And then I changed up my orders. I probably was that. It probably was a bounce in Belgium or getting position on other things.
You were insistent on Paris. And the whole time I was like, I didn't want that. Right. But yeah. So anyways.
Yeah. What else is going on here on the board? Your army's getting pushed back from Galicia.
Yeah. I mean, it's an advancement of the Austrian Turkish position, right? Like, so.
And here's another part. Yeah. So here's the other part. So I'm having these conversations with Ferrum and Liam, and they're talking about this 11-11 split stuff. And this was even going back a little bit into last year. I had worked out a DMZ with Liam about I moved out of West into Spain, not rather than moving forward. Trying to set up this DMZ, and of course he broke it and moved into North Africa. And they're talking with me about how we're going to split you up and do an 11-11-11 center split, and they're continuing to push fleets towards me, which you don't. And I made this argument over and over and over. Like, you guys already have a stalemate line in Italy. You don't have to push. And I said, you're not going to grab this anyway because I'm going to lock it down. But if you're not going to treat me like an ally, I'm not going to treat you like an ally. And so if you continue to load up fleets, you're not treating me like that. You're putting pressure on me, and you want me to stab Ed for when you won't even treat me the right way. And on top of that, underneath the whole thing was I didn't need them to get to 11 anyway, right? I didn't need them to get to 11 centers. Why would I split a board top? And oh, this was the other great part. There, I was like, well, how do you propose we get to 11 each? And they go, well, you're going to need to give us Iberia. I'm thinking, what? Now, this was a part where I didn't do talking, and because in this whole time that these discussions are going on, I'm wanting to say, guys, I don't need you. I'm not going to give you Iberia. Why would I just give you centers? You've not helped me. You've not been an ally. Why are you? I didn't understand the pitch. I didn't. And again, like at different points, I'd actually encourage Liam, like especially here, like at this point, I was like, actually, I think it was maybe the season before, but he could have moved back to Tunis and moved his stuff to get into position to make a really good stab on Farron. And I said, you even got a good excuse here. You can move back to say you want to do this so we can come to an end game. And you'll actually have a good position to make that stab to go.
But he convoyed the army from Bulgaria. That really reduced his chances of a stab.
Yeah, well, and then just where he's placing his fleets, right? They're just in very poor position to ever make that move back to get dots from Farron. Because, here's the thing, like, if he had made a good pitch with you, I mean, how this all shook out could look very different.
Well, I think they did make a good pitch, right? And I think it's about here when they.
Liam making a pitch to you to split up Farron with us.
No, that was never. Yeah, it was always me stab you across the line, right?
Right.
And I guess, they didn't seem to I want them listening to this. They said this all very sincerely to me, right? And I listened to them and I heard them out. And I'm especially sort of wary Farron, like I'm trying to build back a relationship. But effectively, I think I'm the one who's messed up, over the last year and a half or so that we've played games together. And, they came to me and I'm pretty sure it was now. Okay. Oh, it was actually right before this. Here we go. It was in the winter.
They were talking to us both, right?
And they really, they came to me at this point. I think they realized you were a lost cause, right? At this point,
I told them, I said, until you move your fleets back, I'm not working with you. I said, you're not treating me like an ally. I said, because I just got kind of tired of it. I got tired of them coming and talking. It was very insincere to me to be telling me we want to do a split with you and you're moving units towards me when I'm no threat to you. Like I can't take anything in the Italian peninsula. Even if I had every unit imaginable, the stalemate line is there. And when you're moving fleets at me, everything that you're saying to me is insincere. And you're saying I need to trust you on good intentions when you can't do the basic amount of support. And not only that, if they hadn't moved that way, I mean, maybe I don't load up like I do there in the South, and maybe they have a chance down the road. But the fact that they were doing this, it just got to the point. I wanted to really walk the line because I didn't want anyone to become spiteful. Like, you know what? I don't like how he's talking to us, so I'm going to throw centers to my ally. So I didn't go that far down. But it was, to me, I felt very insincere, and it was just like wasting time. So
I don't feel it was insincere, but I don't think it would have been stable no matter how sincere it was to me delivered. Right. They tell me that it's 11, 11, 11, 1. And I'm like, first of all, Farron and Liam are as competitive as you and I are.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm sitting at 10 right now, just to put this there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, somehow we're going to have to take 9 centers off of you. Okay. And I have to get 6 of those 9. And so I couldn't.
There's no deal that we had.
Yeah.
No.
I couldn't do it.
If you attack me, they're taking your centers. Like it's coming eventually.
I assume, yeah. I mean, I just presume that that's what's going to happen, that there's no long-term play. And at this point, I'm sort of resigned to my lot in life. But they make a really hard pitch to me right now before the fall season. And I'm in there for minutes and minutes and minutes because they keep talking and talking and talking to me. And you're getting more and more nervous, right? And I know you're getting nervous because you like, Wes is texting me because you're in a room with Russia, and he's like, Russ is totally panicked.
Something up.
And I tell Farron and Liam this. I go, no stab you would want me to do could possibly be effective now because you
Right.
kept me in here so long.
Yeah.
And I got to go back to Russ, and I'm not doing it. And they're like all disappointed. And I go back to you, and I was like, here's what they want to do. I'm not doing it. I want to work with you. I want to maintain the line.
But you talked a long time with them. There wasn't a lot of time left either when you came back to me.
Like 2 minutes. There was enough time.
Well, you had talked with them long enough that I'd set up 2 orders, 2 different ones. And here's the truth. Like this was not a matter of, this was because at the end of the day, it wasn't like this big devastating stab that I'd really done. I was already topping this board, right? With you and I working this together, they have nothing to get. Like, I'm topping this board regardless. And it really wasn't this stab of, I want to take Ed out at this moment. This was just me getting fearful, seeing how open I was and saying, I don't want to take the chance. And it wasn't, this particular one was not in any way this matter of, man, I want to get rid of Ed. I was pretty comfortable with where I was at and with where we were at in our relationship, that with the dynamics on the board, you weren't going to try to stop me from topping. But also there was the other side where, with all that conversation that was going on, and then you also said to me, they offered me a really good deal. And
which is true. I mean, they did offer one. I just didn't think it was realistic that I would get it. And I was trying to sell you that to get you to feel indebted to me. Not to do what it got. Not the opposite.
I know. And like, sitting here now, like, I understand what you were doing. And I definitely have done that before, want to say, look, I'm trying to do you a solid. But in the moment, with already having set that up and seeing the long discussions, and because I hit you several times, like, hey, we got to talk. Ultimately, with me, I was like, all of that together just said, I'm going to play this thing safe. And so the end result, right, was I bounced you out of Holland because part of the deal was that you would get Holland.
Correct.
So you would get Holland, and generally speaking, right, I'm going to stay the same. We weren't sure if I was going to get Spain, so I might have been dropping one. But I thought, if I go into Holland and you take Paris, and now I'm down 2, I can't defend, and all of that stuff just caused me to go defensive. And so I took Denmark. Obviously, in that moment, as those, you probably should speak to it more, like how you felt in that moment as it went through.
Well, okay. So I understood it because I was telling them just how paranoid you were becoming, right? So I got that, which is, there's 2 ironic things here, which is, one, why I did forgive you after this is because I understood it, right? Because I had empathy for the predicament you were in, because I was talking to them for so long.
Yeah.
I don't have empathy for the next stab, by the way.
I know.
But this I got, which is, and it's also not unfixable, right?
Right. Because I came to you right after and I said, look, I panicked here. I thought there was a chance you're going to stab. We can fix this easily.
And I thought that was sincere, what you were saying.
Yeah.
I don't think, I think you will admit it was sincere, that you sincerely did feel that bad and that it was wrong at the time.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And some of this too was the position, like, because of that misorder, because of just how I'd moved some of my units, I'd opened myself up to feel that threat, also feel vulnerable. And so, I immediately came back and was like, look, this is fixable. We can fix this. I can give you this unit. We can make this work. And so the next stage that kind of determined how this was all going to work was me and you discussing, where we were going to end. And you were like, I want to end on this.
I did, because I felt that was like where I was going to end up, no matter, had we kept our alliance together, right?
Right.
And not because I think I played a bad game at that point, but just because that's how the cookie crumbled with the board dynamics. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And I
And
would have
so
taken 6.
yeah, and I was good. And I said, if that's the case, because I wanted to end on 11,
You got to go after Russia.
yeah, I got to take St. Pete then. So I need to take St. Pete and grind him out. And over the course of this next year, you know, and so I think we're at what point now? So let's go to maybe in the spring.
Yeah. The ironic thing is what I really needed Austria to do was be bumped up against the line to make myself super valuable. Right.
Yeah.
Instead, them moving away, like, you're like, okay, you'll take Denmark or Holland, Denmark or Sweden, like, and we'll get you your 6. And
you'll take Denmark, and then I'll take St. Petersburg, and you can grab Holland too. But then you said to me, like, in the fall of before we moved there, you were like, you know what, I'll just end at 5. That's fine for me. But 5 and 6 isn't really that big of a deal, and let's keep Wes at St. Pete. And so I said, okay, that's fine. I'll end at 11. I'll let you take this. We'll end at 11, and we'll end the game. And so the same thing happened. I put in 2 sets of orders, looking at everything, and within me, the flashback and the horror of multiple times in tournaments where I let up, and like, oh, hey, it's a few centers, and then I like didn't place. I didn't get the result. And I'm sitting there looking at it, and I put in both, and something about 11 and 13 just seemed very different to me. Like, if it would have been the difference between like 13 and 14, or even 13 and 15, I don't think I would have. But between 13 and 11, I'm looking at everything. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for 13 to end there. And also, and this did cross my mind, and it probably was just a justification. But it was like, he said the difference between 5 and 6 isn't that big of a deal. Who cares about a few less? And,
I know. I was trying to be magnanimous to Wes, right?
You are, and that's ultimately there. It really wasn't it obviously wasn't anything. I mean, first of all, I think like how you played Germany, like as far as reworking the alliance, like I think any good player would have done what you did. I don't think that was because it was me. I mean, that was your best play, right? Throwing units at me isn't going to get you a good score. It's just going to have Austria and Turkey eat you up. And a lot of times those survival points, especially like in Weaselmoot, can really make the difference. Because like if I get a limit, right?
Yeah, but like I agree. So that's why 5 would have been better than the 3 I ended up on. Right?
I agree. No, you're right. But I'm saying like in this first, like reworking the first one, right? The first one, like that was the move you had to make. Like wanting 5 or wanting 6, like you don't want to jettison that alliance, because then that just means you have nothing. And we've seen players just react really emotionally when one thing doesn't go their way, and they just like blow up their game, and they give them all to somebody else, and they completely ruin the board, but they also hurt their own position, right? And so like I think you reconstituting that, was the right strategic one. This particular one was, yes, it was just me saying I want a bigger board top.
It's pure greed. But you did it because it was the first game. You didn't know. Like look, there is the logical part of me that totally understands you have to maximize your score. You have no growth opportunity beyond 13, probably. I don't know, maybe, because you pull back in 09.
This does not get as much like this, like DBN just like skipped over this move set. I was very proud of my spring move set, of how exiting Spain and convoying and setting everything up to be able to stalemate this position. I was very about cracking that. And so they just like skipped, oh yeah, game over. And I remember all the time I put into figuring this out, and how proud I was of it. And it was like, nothing.
Yeah, no, this was really good, right? Because I was in the room with the other, I don't think that they anticipated that, right? So
yeah, Liam's like, you got a 50-50 guess. And I was like, I said, I think there's only one move I have to make. And I didn't want to tell him there's nothing you can do to stop this. But Now, it could have probably been, I mean, this was done. This was good. It could have been fine-tuned maybe slightly more, because I found the fine-tuning that could have been a little better, and then I switched it back last second. But it was still like rock solid. I mean, all around, with putting the positions everywhere I needed to lock this part down. And I mean, the chink in the armor there is if Wes, for some reason, decides to work with Turkey, but I wasn't really that worried about that. He owed them nothing, you know.
So yeah, and he told him that, like, you should have heard Wes in the room, right? You know, like,
What do you say?
They went to him, as you might expect, and he's like, it's 2 years too late, basically.
Yeah.
He goes, you know, you could have had that deal and you kept whittling me away. And so, no, not helping at all. Right. Like, he was just like adamant, you know, like, not going to happen. And so
I'm always worried when someone goes and talks with him, though, you know, like.
Right. Yeah, no, but he was straight up friendly to you. Like, no question about it.
I hadn't taken any of his home centers. I mean, like, to me, that's always kind of like the first question: who's sitting in my home centers?
So, you know, but like I said, the logical part gets it. This game, in all honesty, is the first real experience, because, you know, I'm playing diplomacy for the most part with a bunch of strangers, okay, online or virtually, and yeah, I'm really good acquaintances now with a lot of them, but nobody is a better friend in the diplomacy world to me than you. So I understand the expression now, the game that ruins friendships, because I was super upset. Like,
you were mad.
Super upset.
You were like, this is going to affect things, you know, blah, blah, blah.
You eroded a lot of trust, right? In a first round game to do this. Like, I don't know if I can ally with you knowing that you're going to eke out the advantage at the end on me for whatever great justification you have. Like, I'm not sure I would have done this in a first round game. I'm not saying I wouldn't have, because I wasn't in that position. So I don't like hypocrites who are like, I would have never done that. I'm saying I do have a history of first round games, and I do leave points on the board, and I can go show you a bunch of them, and it's worked out just fine for me. But I don't have your perspective or experience where you've come up just short.
Well, we have different play styles too, right? And in that regard, like how your pathway to winning a tournament is different than my pathway to winning a tournament. Like, you know, you won your tournament because in the last game, right, those guys believed you wouldn't stab for the win.
Right.
Or not for the solo. They didn't believe that. Whereas with me, if I'm on the board, I'm not going to get that consideration. You know, people know that I try to play.
I just didn't think you'd do it to me.
Yeah. Well, but my point there is that, like, I know that every point that I get in the last game, I'm going to have to grind it out. I mean, the only way people are going to throw centers to me is if they really hate someone else. And it's not the matter of like somehow people like hate me or anything like that. It's that my game style, I don't really try to win people on personality points. It's just, I don't play that way. It's I don't know. It's just different like that. It's hard for me to approach winning that way. And so I think another reason was because you and I already have this like baked in because of outside of diplomacy. You know, it wasn't any, like, I never appealed to you in the game like, hey, you should help me because I'm your friend, right?
No, but you did throw one line at me, like at some point, like, oh, you did say, you know, you wanted me to have a good game. I mean, you tried to play the sympathy card with me.
But you said it to me, right? You're the one who said it.
I did, but you weren't bad about reminding me a couple hours later to try and guilt me.
I don't remember that at all, but I don't remember the nature of the conversation. I may have just been agreeing with what you said. I can't remember. But yeah, who knows in the course of the game, you know, exactly what was said or not. But I'm just saying, like, generally, like that, I don't, and I that's just not kind of my play style. And so again, like, you know, so for me, grinding out a few points in the first round really can I've seen that it really matters. For me, I've seen that happen and been that close. And again, it was kind of just a matter. I put in orders for both, and I looked at both and kind of went back and forth. And it was kind of like, you know what, I want to win the tournament. I want to maximize my chance to do this. And from other discussions too, with your thoughts about this tournament, like you've said at the beginning, you've already qualified for DVNI on all practical considerations. So at least how you have been portraying when you were kind of pitching for you and I to ally together is like, I don't have to be as ruthless. So I mean, I didn't think, and I'm talking a lot about different reasons, but it wasn't like a super deep thought process. I kind of looked at everything and was like, you know what, this is the moveset I would normally make. And there is something to be said, that when I'm talking with people on the board and you're on the board, that people believe that I'll work with them, because I will, right? I want people, if we're both on the board, not to think, hey, they're going to automatically work together. I mean, I want people to think, hey, if I give him a legitimate offer that's going to work, he's going to work with me. And I feel like I will do that in game. And I think it's more healthy for both of us, right, to be able to do that, just because we're so competitive.
We are, and it's also strange because we do have two different play styles, right? Like I remember Village Idiot's psychoanalysis of me, which is I have a desperate desire to be liked by people, but his psychoanalysis of you is Russ isn't going to trust anyone except the board, right? Like the board is what it comes down to in the end. And for me, it comes down to the people. And I think that explains in some way, at least in my mind, how we approach things.
Well, yeah. And, when you were kind of like, as the game ended, where you were like just talking about how disappointed, like I noticed, no, maybe I read this wrong, but I noticed when I brought up the season 2 finals, like you dialed it back a lot, because like that particular game, I remember like I had helped you into Moscow and all the promises, you had made about how great a guy I was, how everybody was wrong about, what they said. And, all these things. And then literally the next turn you supported Austria against me after.
Yeah, look, I did you dirty in that game, like really badly. By the way, people can go back to Positively right now. But I don't think I'm that player anymore. I'm the same person, but I'm not the same player. Like I have a better understanding of the board now than I did at that point when I was just starting.
Right. No. You're definitely way better in a lot of different areas of the game, as far as in how you make the decisions. But and again, I looking back, like not helping me would definitely have been the right decision. I'm still convinced that I think you shouldn't have helped either of us, that you should have still capitalized on it. But all that being said, like I remember that moment, like of helping someone, like that was probably it's definitely the most painful stab I've ever experienced, because of how much emotion was put into it, and already how much I liked you just from our interaction like that. And I know why you made those decisions, like the factors that were all in play. But anyway, with bringing that up, I noticed like me just saying like, hey, you know what, we got through the season 2 finals with that would happen. We'll get through this. And we have, a lot faster, a lot quicker than it did the last time.
Yeah, I mean, only because you won, probably, in all honesty, which helps, right? Because then
like if you would have won season 2 finals, there'd been nothing I could have said, right?
Right. Yeah. No.
Yeah, you'd have pulled that off, and credit, like you did have a chance to win it. You did take away my chance of winning, but I think it just maybe it propelled Austria's, his ability a little bit too much. But regardless, no, I think we would have been fine even if I hadn't won, because I think the decision within the context of the tournament, within the context of the game, I think was a legitimate one. It wasn't anything against you, and I don't think personally, like how I played England this game was the same how I played it in tons of games.
Oh, yeah, right. I understand that, but let me give you a counterfactual. I want you to answer me honestly. Okay.
All right.
Which is, had I gotten together with France and done an FG and slowly whittled away your position, and let Sweden be Russia, and he piles on, how would you have felt if I had just done that to you?
It would have sucked. Yeah, definitely. I would have wanted to hear. I know I wouldn't have like responded like again, we're different kind of personalities in this. I wouldn't have responded the way that you had, but I definitely would have wanted to have heard why you did it, and the other difference there too, though, is that like part of your play style, right, when you come in is you want to make that personal connection. And so you want to give reasons personally why you'll work with somebody. Like that's really, really important. And so it would have all depended, like, with our opening negotiations where you're like, hey, you know what, I want you to be able to get to the DB&I want you to be able to do this. Like if you would have said all that and done that, that would have really, really, I mean, it would have sucked either way. Like, I'm not saying like I would have just been like, oh, hey, whatever.
Yeah, and everything would have come back at me, right? You're like, oh, well, we had this other game where I, like,
yeah, I would have leveraged.
Think about that, right? Like, there are things I could have done to totally screw you over.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't have been upset because with that. I'm not. I understand, like in the game moments and even coming out of the game, like there is a whole, it's like coming out of war, right? You got to process what happened and think it through, emotionally and everything else. Like, no, I get it. And, it's the same thing. Like I tried to take all of that with a very, acknowledge kind of how you felt and why you would feel that. But again, like I said, if a board game, if us both trying to win a board game, affects our friendship, that says more about our friendship than, right?
Well, I know I agree with that, right? Like I do consider your friend, but like it can't, if you care about something,
right?
And like you and I both spend a lot of time on the game of diplomacy, right? If you care about something, it's going to affect you in some way. That's what makes this game so darn challenging.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and when it comes to like, wanting to win, caring about how you go about doing it and your thoughts on that. I mean, at the end of the day, right, if we didn't really care a lot about the game, then, a lot of this stuff probably wouldn't matter as much either. So there's the competitive side, all weaved into it. That, sometimes that can be hard to separate out, right? The disappointment of not doing as well as you wanted with how it happened. But I mean, like I've been incredibly disappointed in, like I remember like there's been games where there's people I really liked that I feel like I had helped and done different stuff with that they like, took me out. It didn't, I don't think really help their position either. And this game attracts very competitive people that when they get dropped on the board, they're playing to win. And, even in my second round, like John, who is Germany, he's part of the briefing. He's been writing, for a year, organizing issues every 3 months. And literally like without a second hesitation, he was just throwing units at me. And, if you take that personal, it's tough. But obviously with us, it's deeper than just we like each other about diplomacy. Like, there's a real human connection. So it's never going to be easy. Like if you and I make a decision that it's in our long-term benefit to not work together or to take, to make our position a little stronger, it's never going to be an easy thing. But I think this is a good moment, right, for us to, I think it reaffirms the friendship too in another way. Like I know coming out of eCarnage, I was really, really upset with myself. Just like I felt like I could have played a lot better games and I didn't. And anyway, it's kind of what makes this game interesting and fun. And the fact that our friendship has only continued to grow through the different games that we've played together, I think,
yeah, all that's true. Just don't be expecting me to jump on the alliance train with you anytime soon.
Well, I will always feel good if you're playing to win. Right. Like I feel like I can predict my favorite games are when everyone is playing to win without any edge, like, oh, I want to get this person or, oh, I want to help this person. Like if people just try to win and play their best game that they can, like, I love that. And granted, like there were factors on this board that made it difficult for our alliance to stay balanced for you. And so, then it just became at the end, you know what? I've been disappointed too many times. It was even Weaselmoot, you know, last year there was some stuff that happened in the second round. And I've been there where the natural continuation was get a few more centers. And
well, and if anything, I mean, this is a very Chicago thing to do.
right.
I mean, that's the Chicago way, right? You know, that is, you know, literally from the movie, the Untouchable. That's how the club plays. You know, so yeah, no. I mean, you played that way, but you know, so and it worked out. Ultimately, you didn't need those centers, which is the ironic thing, but you didn't know that at the time.
Right. Well, the virtual meta is very, very different than the face-to-face meta, and of course the Weasel meta too, which especially in like Chicago, there's like the exaltation, my understanding at least, the exaltation of getting your best possible score. Like that's the right thing to do. And if you don't do that, there's shame, right? And whereas there is definitely a group within virtual that's anathema, right? And
yeah, well, we have to do another podcast on that, right? You know, because I do think that that's a big problem in virtual face-to-face right now, which is seeing the same people work, you know, sort of over and over again. So games like this, I think, help hurt that meta, which I think it has to happen, frankly.
Yeah. It ultimately, whenever there's the idea that there's cliques of people that are going to always work together, that makes the game just not fun. It just makes it not fun. And that's, you know, just like I said before, you know, everybody trying to get the best possible score is a game that people can walk away with. And even if you didn't do well, you can still say that was a fun game. I was challenged by it. I didn't come out good at the end. It's when it's like you see, oh, these two people, these three people on the board. Well, I know how this game's going to end up, you know, working out. They're definitely not going to fight each other. And so being able to see that is important. And anyway, we played. This was our third virtual game, right? I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was about time anyway for something to happen. I would just say like my interest going into that game, you know, as the game progressed, was to get a little bit bigger than I was, and the last one definitely.
I'm talking. It's getting worse. Okay, the little bit was me.
I know.
I'm the little bit. All right. I got it. All right. We understand. Let's leave on a semi-good note. Okay. It's been a really long podcast. So I appreciate everybody listening. If you wanted to hear, especially if you're a newer player, that, you know, things that will happen, but I still think I'd play with Russ again. I can't say I would ally with him so quickly, but I appreciate that we were able to hash this out on the podcast, and for diplomacybriefing.com for sponsoring us. Russ, I'll give you the last word. Say what you'd like to say, make whatever excuse you need to make about your evil play, and we can move on.
Yeah, so first of all, this was a great tournament. Both of my games were some of my favorite games I've played. And not just because of board topping, I mean like the people and how we played it and how the game worked, you know, how the interactions and everything were just very, very good, very what you'd expect from good diplomacy players. So all of that was really enjoyable, and encourage people to you know, try out virtual, get involved in some of the tournaments. So really enjoyed that. And then of course, you know, kind of as this whole winding you know, discussion about diplomacy and personal relationships, I think this also shows what makes diplomacy unique, in that you get to know people, and you get to have discussions around a game that is a lot deeper than just the mechanics of the game. You get to know, you know, what's going on in people's lives, and so because of that, you develop rich friendships around a game that I'm not familiar develop as readily as other games. So you know, we think again, diplomacy attracts a certain type of person that, you know, is able to navigate these waters. but you're only going to find, if you're somebody like that, you're probably only going to find people like that around this game. You know, it's not a gigantic amount of people that want to continue to play, but when you find people that are like that, that have a maturity about them too, like Ed, these are people that you definitely want to develop a relationship more with. So I'm glad about that.
Thanks for the last word. Thanks to diplomacybriefing.com for sponsoring us. And thanks for joining us on the podcast to hash it out. Good night.